Thank you, Speaker. The order of service for the funeral of the Hon Roger Goldsworthy AO on 11 July said it well. Roger was a giant of South Australian politics and played the key role in ensuring the development of the Olympic Dam, Roxby Downs, uranium, copper and gold mine, which has sustained the South Australian economy for the last 40 years. That he was a giant of South Australian politics sells it that somewhat short. He was a giant of South Australia. And I acknowledge in particular Lynn, Carolyn, Reece, Mark, for your presence here with us today. I'm particularly thoughtful that Lynn, for so many years, met weekly with my grandmother, with Nana, and they'd share a morning tea together in retirement. It was marvellous to be together at Roger's funeral just a few weeks ago. I want to recognise the presence, along with so many of my colleagues present and past on this side of the House, the presence of the Deputy Premier and the Minister for Education at that state service, and I extend thanks to the government for providing that on behalf of the family. To Lynn, you were married for 73 years and Roger's celebrated as a giant of the state, and he did it right alongside you for those 73 years. That itself is an extraordinary achievement. And as one who comes to a parliament as a son of a father, I think it's one of the great tributes that can be paid to a father, that it inspires another generation. And Mark, I recognise you in particular for your service as member for Carville for so many years subsequent to Roger. I want to say a few more words in particular about Roger's towering achievement as Minister for Mining during the Tonkin government, 79 to 82. The high watermark, of course, was in 82 on the passage of that critical legislation. The battle for which was one of such towering achievement that we do well to stay and reflect on it. It took much more than vision. It took a dedication to wrestle with the Parliament, the state, lots of prevailing sentiment that was abiding for years at the time, and I'll just reflect on that in some detail. But it wasn't a flourish, and I commend to members a contribution that Roger made to the Parliament in late 1980, having returned from overseas travel. And just a short part of that succinct contribution that he made in the House on 25 November 1980, he said that he'd been meeting with government officials and industry in Canada, Britain, Sweden, Holland, France and Japan, and he also visited to Hong Kong and to Israel on that journey. And amongst other observations, he said, and I quote, "I've obtained valuable information which will assist the government in its consideration of issues including development and processing of our uranium resources, exploration for hydrocarbon resources and further development of existing resources, future use of coal for power generation and renewable energy resource technology, especially in solar energy and electric vehicles." Now that's in November 1980. He was truly visionary, practical and dedicated towards the task of achieving the improvement that was in part inspired by those inquiries even early in the period of his time as minister. But I think, and on this occasion, I make a rare extended reference to the history of the Liberal Party, written by Baden Teague and he addresses the establishment of the mine at Roxby Downs in the following terms. The massive mine at Roxby Downs could only have been established by a skilled and determined Liberal government. The Liberals went to the 79 election with a policy to develop Roxby Downs at a time when all their political opponents and every environmental group in Australia were vehemently opposed to any form of uranium mining. Labor opposed it at every stage of the debate in Parliament. Most of the unions opposed it. Mike Rann was a staff advisor to Labor leader Bannon and strongly anti-uranium, who publicly boasted that Roxby Downs was just a, quote, mirage in the desert. Roger Goldsworthy, Liberal Deputy Premier, as Minister for Mines and Energy, rightly regarded this win for Roxby's approval by Parliament as his finest hour. This Olympic Dam copper, gold and uranium mine was to be a free enterprise mining development, but it was necessary before private investment could begin to have parliamentary approval to guarantee the indenture, to sign the contract for the terms under which the mine would function and to agree on the royalties payable to the SA public for the minerals extracted, as the Minister for Mining has already addressed. There was no doubt about the extraordinary size of the Roxby Downs mineral deposit. It had been discovered in 1975 following world-leading geological work led by Dr. Roy Woodall AO, the Chief Geologist of Western Mining Corporation. It was reliably estimated to contain the 4th largest copper deposit in the world, the 5th largest gold deposit in the world, and by far the largest uranium deposit in the world. The trouble was, though, that these minerals were 300 metres underground and located in a desert 580 kilometres north of Adelaide, with no infrastructure, no utilities and no services. To establish roads, electricity, water supply and housing, let alone community services, would cost $1 billion. The mining company, of course, negotiated to maximise the government's contribution, but the government knew that it could only afford to pay for the school, the hospital, local roads and a police station, which were normally called upon to provide in the establishment of any new township. The negotiations for the indenture agreement involved not only getting the agreement of the mining company to pay the normal royalty applying under the Mining Act, but also to pay a second-tier profit-related royalty to ensure that the public received a fair return from the anticipated mineral wealth. The fair return was politically essential in order to convince the public that this venture was in their interest. More than a dozen such issues were raised and negotiated by expert teams over many months in 1980 to 1982. It was something that took place over the bulk of the Tonkin government's period. The pressure to agree on the details of the indenture mounted and became even more intense when it became clear in early 1982 that if the indenture bill failed to pass Parliament by 30 June, there could be no second attempt. WMC's partner, British Petroleum, BP, was already losing patience the whole venture and threatened to pull out forever. At the same time, there was another kind of pressure that had to be dealt with. This was from the constant and ferocious pressure arising from Labor's platform ban on uranium mining and its deliberate scare campaigns to focus fear in the public mind of the perceived dangers of uranium radiation, of health risks to employees, and at worst, the potential diversion of uranium from providing fuel for energy production to making destructive bombs. All these challenges are confronted by the Liberal government led by Roger, sustained over years, which responded with rational arguments and scientific facts. The scare campaigns of Labor and the unions went on to infect the media, the parliamentary committee inquiries and the constant parliamentary debates. At one stage, Minister Goldsworthy had to stare down a false report on radiation dangers that had come from a Labor-influenced section in the SA Health Department until experts both from Australia and overseas examined it and found it to be unsound and its conclusions false. Even sections of the Mines Department for a time obstructed their own ministers' negotiations about the royalties because these public servants genuinely believed that the minister's proposed high rates in the second royalty might deter private mineral exploration in the future. However, Minister Goldsworthy, fully supported by the Tonkin Liberal government, withstood all these pressures and distractions. The Liberals pressed on. The final battle for Roxby could only be won by getting the numbers on the floor of Parliament. The House debate it wouldn't be a problem because the government had the numbers there, but in the council the Liberals would be defeated by one vote if the Labor and Democrat councillors voted together against the indenture bill. Everyone was aware of the issues and everyone was aware of the numbers. After full consideration, all seemed lost when the bill was put and the council defeated it. However, the next day, one of the Labor councillors, Norm Foster MLC, had serious misgivings about the outcome. He was the one of the Labor opposition who had most actively researched the matter. He had visited Roxby, he'd been involved in the Parliamentary Committee inquiry, and he understood the potential of this mine to bring employment and genuine long-term prosperity to the state and people. Foster had met with the preliminary workers at Roxby, and he knew that they would lose their jobs if the mine failed to go ahead, and he'd never taken any action that would take away jobs from workers. He informed Minister Goldsworthy about his change of mind, and Goldsworthy acted with immediate urgency. He used the recommittal procedure in the council to have a second vote on the bill. With lots of drama, Foster conscientiously swapped sides, and on 19 June 1982 the bill was passed. This is how Roxby began. The mine was soon fully established, and by the end of the first year of operation there were 1,200 jobs on site and another 4,000 jobs supporting the mine. The initial revenue to the state was $30 million per annum, and this has greatly increased since. Importantly, the mine is returning a profit to the mining company and to its shareholders who provided the development capital. For more than 30 years, from the first production in 1988, it's provided employment and prosperity to the people of South Australia. Only a Liberal government could have achieved this complex development. And finally, and to go on to that moment in 1982, and I quote, "The journalist Matt Abraham published a report of events when the Roxby legislation was finally passed. He wrote, quote, "The Liberal government finally let its hair down late yesterday afternoon to celebrate the Roxby Downs go-ahead. Norm Foster had taken the longest walk of his life to cross the Legislative Council floor to let the bill pass. The Liberal Party room was crowded and the scene was one of absolute, untainted, almost childlike elation. It is hard to imagine politicians being any happier, even after an election victory. The curly-haired Roger Goldsworthy was standing on a chair looking like he wanted to have a darn good cry as the off-key strains of He's a Jolly Good Fellow rang about his ears. A bleary-eyed, flush-faced Premier nodded in agreement as his deputy thanked all those who'd worked towards this outcome. This unbridled release of emotion came at the end of an electric day. Tingles ran up my spine," unquote. And I thank the House for bearing with me with what was an extended quote. I hope captures the spirit and the energy and the dedication that it took for Roger to achieve that outcome in that era, which I think was appropriately summed up, as I said at the outset, in the form of order of service. That alone rendered him a giant of our state. His legacy continues to this day, and indeed, as the Minister for Mining has observed, will continue for many decades to come. I do briefly want to acknowledge in what we all recognise was a period of extended service to this Parliament as Member for Carville since 1972, his extended service to both the opposition and the government, to the Liberal Party as Deputy Leader. It's a point not lost on me at this time. And while I couldn't for a moment look to emulate that record-breaking achievement as a Deputy Leader of our party, his service in that role, his demonstrated commitment to unity and our capacity to do great things in government stands as a testament, as an example to all of us who serve as members of a party of government and as members of Parliament. His service was exemplary in that regard. His towering achievements for the state of South Australia will never be forgotten, May he rest in peace.